Welcome to another video. In my series, Freemasonry and Satanism, we are up to 69, and this is part 4. And I have done 70 and 71. So I've been mixing it up, several books on the Zionism issue, the Jewish problem, the Jewish question, Jewish history, Christianity, involving the Muslims, Arabs, and the New World Order. A lot of interesting activities going on in the world. Who hasn't said the New World Order? The Prime Ministers of England, Brown, Tony Blair said the New World Order. Kissinger says the New World Order. Obama says the New World Order. Bush said the New World Order. Clinton said the New World Order. Bush Sr. said the New World Order. The Pope said the New World Order. So are we to believe that they're planning a New World Order? What does this have to do with it? Bloody Zion. So if you're watching my videos, I hope I'm not wearing out the issue. And I've been mixing it up, different sequences of the book, not in a row, for a purpose, so we could get some various resources from different sources. Historical information, ancient information, current information, on what the heck is going on, which started this whole series for me, by the way. 2005, I had one of those big zero birthdays and went down to Costa Rica and talked with a bunch of people at a tiki bar in Jaco Beach. And they said, "You Americans are so stupid. We feel so sorry for you. You don't know what's going on." Well, you know what? They were right. Most Americans don't know what's going on. I didn't know what's going on. So I started reading books. Told myself I couldn't write a book until I studied for 10 years. And it was almost 10 years, and I had studied and read so many books, watched so many videos, purchased and read and collected so many magazines, and press releases, boxes and boxes of press releases, and wrote essays and comments on the press releases, and started learning the attitude of people out there. And I found out it's about 50-50. You got 50% of the people approximately who believe in God, in my world, and 50% of the people who are zombified and say there's no God. 50% of the people think you shouldn't kill, and about 50% emailed me and said I was crazy. I guess they want you can kill. I guess countries can fight to be empire builders. The people believe this. 50% of the people are Democrats. 50% of the people are Republicans. Go to a football game these days, or watch it on TV, NFL this weekend. The games are usually just about 50-50 equal. You notice in the last couple minutes of the game is the winning couple points? How can this be? Is there some purpose behind it? Is it just incidental? I think not. It's psychology. People controlling it know what they're doing. And it's becoming clear to a lot of people that the USA and the world's media are owned by these capitalist banksters, and I'm a capitalist working man, but these banksters who want to have gigantic corporations and take over the world don't believe in empathy or pity or doing what's fair, what Jesus taught. They use any and all means to get more of what they have. They have some kind of religion, and there's symbolism, as we all know. You can see the rising sun or the sun's rays or triangles. A lot of people are aware of this. The Illuminati. And then the Freemasons. And then we're talking about Zionists. Jesuits, the assassins of the Vatican, the enforcers, the mafia. So, and they've never had a Jesuit pope. And the leader of the Jesuits is called the Black Pope. So, with Ratzinger being indicted on crimes to do with child abuse and other things, and stepping down, and then they put the Jesuit Pope, I guess called the Black Pope, in charge of the Vatican, it would say to me that the Vatican is positioning itself for a radical movement, a war, if you will, a battle, an enforcement. And 300 or so years after Jesus was crucified, and the Catholic Church, which means universal church, embraced the Christian religion as its own, because its own empire was failing and Christianity was growing in the Western Asia and Europe. So they thought it was a good idea to embrace Christianity and force it on the world, and crusades and all, from over there to Jerusalem and marching down to South America, killing people, confiscating gold, and bringing the new religion of Christianity. An interesting story of history if one wants to understand it. But a lot of people today, try talking to them about anything on these issues, and they will tell you to shut up. They will probably get enraged. They just don't want to contemplate. They just want a party. Birthday party, football party. Happened in the old ages too. That even in Rome at one time with one of their leaders, that's what he did. He let the games begin. And the people just partied so they would forget reality. But I don't think you can forget reality. Things are happening. Things are in motion behind the scenes. So, with that, let me read from chapter 21, The Tyranny of Zionism. This is all just piecemeal information to give anybody who would like to learn, watch my videos. One, the sources where I get stuff, so you can go get the books yourself. I source everything. I try to have hard copies of everything I say and show you. And two, it's after a while when you get a piecemeal of history about this and about that and enough of it, you start to become educated on a subject that you might not otherwise be educated, like myself. I'm gaining ground every day, and it's enough to blow a person away. Personally, a little crazy. So here we go. One can see the method of Zionist rule in Israel and other communist states. Remember, communist means commune, people living like cattle. Communism. Get it? Got it? Their philosophy is that might makes right. And that would be in paragraph 12 of the Protocols of Zion, if you want to look it up. So they believe might makes right. And remember, we had Jade Helm dispersing troops and equipment all over the United States. A lot of it with UN symbolisms on it. Trying to confiscate the guns. Think about that. Might makes right. And they want our guns. Because then they will have the might, and they will be right, and we will be disarmed and wrong. Edward Hendrie, and who is he? Is a lawyer and a Christian researcher who has written 5 books. So And we all remember, I've said it in previous videos, I could have studied a particular subject. I could have wrote a book. I worked as an electronic engineering technician at a major aerospace company for 10 years. I've been a businessman with my own companies for 25 years. I've had an interesting life. I've sailed my own boat to the Bahamas. Been offshore more times than I can count, sailing or fishing for big fish. And traveling quite a bit. I've had an interesting life. I grew up in Maine. Spent many years in Florida. I'm in the mountains of North Carolina. So I could have, and I was into science and psychic research, holistic healing, history, UFOs. I have almost every UFO book there is that was published. I read a lot of them. So I could have taken it upon myself to probably write a book. One book, and then maybe another book, and then another book. But that wasn't what I saw that I thought was worthwhile doing. Because there's plenty of books out there. So I thought, instead of investigating an issue, I would investigate the books, investigate the authors. And I have discovered that some of the books are trying to share information that's important and truthful, which I think you can say this is. And then some of it's trying to persuade and take people down a path of deception, and that would be a lot of New Age books. Maybe all the UFO books, or a lot of the writers. I think some of the writers on the UFO books, a lot of them were probably sincere. But when you see something that was probably a man-made craft or something, I'm just saying, I think the UFO issue was a false flag. I think it was a generated, intentional issue to get people away from God, Jesus, Christianity, any religion. And reading the history here, we can almost see that. And 100 years ago, there were famous people who said, you know, the whole world would get united if we had some kind of aliens attacking Earth. So they said that before the UFO issue ever came along. I believe from the monuments on the planet, from the Egyptian pyramids and the Sphinx, in Lebanon, the gigantic stones of Baalbek, that the only thing that people seem to think they could be were big stones for a landing pad. And then monuments in South America, Central America, North America, all over Asia, China, India, Russia. I believe that on this earth, there has been, and I think most people will agree with this, great civilizations in the past. All the way from the Atlantean area, which yet again had some very interesting, concerning issues of cloning and creating creatures for sex and slaves and other things. We've seen it in mythology, half horse, half man, all kinds of things, half snake, half human. And so it's all out there. The ancient history is there. We can all agree to that. Humanity wasn't born yesterday. But then, because of probably the abhorrent or the insane, psychopathic behavior of the humans, whatever God is or was, or God is, the civilization on earth had to be destroyed, and it was a great flood. Intentionally, or just a natural disaster, that's open to debate. But all over the world, Hopi Indians, Europe, Asia, everywhere the natives talk about a great flood. And even in Hopi Indians talk about some beings with higher intelligence and capabilities built underground cities or structures for them to survive, including down in Ecuador, where Eric von Daniken, that book I went over, The Gold of the Gods, gigantic vast caves in the top of the mountains, leading all the way down to the ocean, the Pacific, under the ocean and up to some island. So again, we see that there were higher intelligences, advanced people on earth before the flood, preparing the people to survive. I don't think it's from some vast civilization on some far away star systems who are much more intelligent and advanced and better than we are. Because if that were true, I think by now they would have stopped some of the psychopathic insanity going on Earth, the murder and mayhem all over the Middle East right now since 9/11. So what are we to think? We can say one thing, according to all those people in high places who keep touting off New World Order. We can say they want a New World Order. We can say they have done things to bring it about. We can say they are doing things to bring it about now. So we want to know who it is and to wake people up to maybe put a stop to it. I think we can also conclude that we are spiritual beings in biological bodies. There's enough paranormal investigation and documents and books out there in history to talk about ghosts and spirits and out-of-body experiences and remote viewing and all those things to probably come to an agreement with our own minds that this is not the real world. The spiritual world is the real world. This physical world, this created world, as per in the Bible, was created for our benefit. Our reality, experience it. And it gives people the opportunity to show who and what they are. People who are strong, people who are cowards, people who don't care, people who are good, people who are evil. So who are we? In this lifetime, I guess it brings it out. We make decisions. And there seems to be little doubt that there was a man called Jesus. He was crucified. And apparently he rose from the dead. Apparently he revived other people, Lazarus who died. Apparently he cured people who had leprosy and other ailments, blindness, deafness, even possessed by demons, he would cast them out. So we get a better feel for reality by talking about it, reading some books, and possibly, it's very important because of what they're trying to bring about. Even the Pope, coming to the United States here in 2015, 2 weeks ago, and saying that global warming was an emergency, had to take some action now. Sustainability is an emergency, take some action now. So what has that got to do with making people give up their rights, their properties, their wealth, and health, and sky spraying, and HARP systems? Certainly seems like this New World Order is not going to be pleasant. So might makes right, according to this book on page 348. The tyranny of Zionism. And they want to remove our guns, and might makes right. Our right lies in force. The word right is an abstract thought proved by nothing. The word means no more than give me what I want in order that thereby I may have proof that I am stronger than you. So if the people of the USA give up their guns, these people who think that might is right and that they're smarter than us will have probably sat there and looked at each other and laughed and said, see, we are smarter than them. They were stupid enough to give up their guns. They were stupid enough to let us put Agenda 21 on them. They were stupid enough to let us take over their banking system in 1913 with Woodrow Wilson being part of the conspiracy, who later said he regretted it. Look this stuff up. The Zionist mind has no moral compass. And they're saying the Anti-Defamation League, B'nai of Birth, and political pacts for the Israeli Zionist State of Israel Jews, that if you're anti-Zionist, you're anti-Semitic. And you can't be anti-Semitic because all Arabs are Semitic. They just use that as a ploy to make people not want to be anti-Semitic. Just like they're saying you're a hater if you're anti-homosexuality, when it's clearly that it's a commandment not to indulge in adultery. And other places in the Bible, men should not lie with men. This is historic, ancient, biblical information. And you're a hater if you're going to go with them. So they're making up, down, and down, up, and 2 plus 2 equals 5. So they're confusing the masses. And for the masses to shake their head and be unconfused, they're just going to go along with this whole debacle. Deception, propaganda. They don't want to come to grips and stand up and say the truth. The ends justify the means. Page 348. So no matter what they do to get their ends, the ends justify the means. That includes 911. Whatever will accomplish the result is politically acceptable. Whatever will accomplish the result is politically acceptable, regardless of its immorality. Paragraph 16 of Protocol 1 states, Protocols of Zion. Go look them up free online, print out a copy, highlight them. The instruction guide for taking over the world, enslaving we the people. All over the world, Europe, Africa, United States. The result justifies the means. Let us, however, in our plans, direct our attention not so much to what is good and moral as to what is necessary and useful. So they want to direct their attention not to what is good and moral, but what is necessary and useful for them to be in power, to dominate. These methods have been put to plans that have been nurtured in a diabolical conspiracy that has spanned centuries. Edward Hendrie, Bloody Zion. There's a symbol of the star on the Israeli flag with a little symbol of communism in the middle there. Moving on. Before us is a plan in which is laid down strategically the line from which we cannot deviate without running the risk of seeing the labor of many centuries brought to naught. So they've been working hard on this plan of world domination. World War I, World War II, French Revolution, Germany Revolution, Russian Revolution, Chinese Revolution, taking over South America, Central America, killing off leaders, Africa, and all kinds of insidious activities in the United States, crashing the economic system 8 or 9 times after they took over our banking system. And prior to that, they also did it with the war between the North and the South. I think Albert Pike was a general for the South. Long time these deviants, demonic beings have been behind the scenes. Woodrow Wilson even said that. There's something so sinister that people hush it up under their breath when they say anything bad about it. Something like that. I paraphrase a lot. When the Jews thrive, then also does the nation in which they reside in like manner fade. So when they thrive, we fade. When they gain money, we lose money. When they gain more freedom, we lose more freedom. When they gain in immorality and debased behavior, we lose our holiness and righteousness. We join them. Just saying. The idea of a restored Israel with a resulting world of harmony and justice is just a cover story to conceal the Maccabee plan for world dominion from the ignorant goyim. That's what they call us, goyim, which means cattle. Which means they think of us like cattle, and they think we have no souls. And they certainly want to destroy our belief in Christianity, God, and Jesus, so that we will not be saved and go to heaven, as Jesus said. Whosoever shall believe in me shall be saved. They don't want you to believe in him and be saved. I suppose it is a battle between the demonic angel kicked out of heaven, cast out of heaven, and the third of the angels with him. They want to build a bigger army and have a lot of people join their evil army, fighting against God. So we all have a choice. It's easier to understand that from what we know than to try to believe that there's some planets out there with advanced societies that are so fantastic that they're going to come save us. And they've been flying around eyeballing us like they're biologists or something. Yeshaya Tishbai, who is a religious authority on the Jewish Kabbalah, reveals that the presence of Israel among the nations mends the world, but not the nations of the world. So I suppose the idea of eliminating the population of 85 to 90% of the people, killing 6 billion, might mend the world, make it free of humans, and make it enriching for them to romp around with no other people. Canoeing, kayaking, fishing. They want the world for themselves. Just saying. It does not bring the nations closer to holiness, but rather extracts the holiness from them and thereby destroys their ability to exist. So we need to get our holiness, our goodness, our righteousness back and say no to the decadent activity that they're convincing everybody that is normal. It's not normal. And it will destroy our nation. And as George Bush said, out of chaos and anarchy will come the New World Order. They will clamp down. They will microchip everybody. They will say because of all the terrorism and all the gun shootings and all the other pollution that we have to be enslaved like animals because we are animals. That's what they'll say. The purpose of the full redemption is to destroy the vitality of all the peoples. This destructive influence stems from the Jewish core belief that the souls of non-Jews are evil. So to want to help your fellow man when he's down and out, like Jesus did, they classify as evil. And for them to connive and deceive and get money from everybody and make them go broke and poor and starve, to them is good. Higher IQ, more intelligent. I've got everything, you've got nothing. You must be stupid. That's their philosophy. And people are being bought by this system of socialism. Free food stamps, free money, free aid, low interest loans. Look what it did to the robust housing market, where it was unprecedented amount of people own their own home prior to Bush. Now the United States is becoming known as the land of the renters. An unprecedented amount of people don't own homes. Who owns the homes and who will be residing in those homes in the future? Likely not us. There is a plan. By supporting the state of Israel, dispensational Zionists are furthering the cause of a world antichrist religion and oppressive political system. In Israel, the laws give Jews special status and privileges according to the Gentiles. And I'm just reading my highlighted portions here. Go buy this book. Valuable information. Give credit where credit is due. I read books, highlight some sentences, and do a book review. I think he's right on. So they got some new ID cards. Any Israeli government official can instantly tell if he was looking at a card of a Jew or an Arab, because the date of birth on the IDs of the Jews is given accordingly to the Hebrew calendar, And in addition, the ID of an Arab, and unlike a Jew, includes the grandfather's name. So they can't discriminate by your driver's license, but they can put the Hebrew birth date on there, which would be like 5725 versus 2015, which is now for us Christians. Which brings me to another very important point. They've got a lot of the people in the United States zombified, believing there was no God, Jesus was a myth, but yet our calendar says 2015. The people that believe that there's no God and Jesus was a myth have been deceived and told that, even through cartoons and TV shows. And they're willing to believe it, when the truth is right in front of them if they want to look. But the calendar, 2015, since Jesus' birth. So they could they rig the ID cards in Israel. So when they want to check you out, if it says 5,000 something, they know you're a Jew. And if it's 2015, they know you're not a Jew. And other means so they can discriminate against non-Jews. What is the purpose of this systematic identification of Gentiles and Jews in Israel? Prejudicial discrimination. By this method, the Israeli government can determine who is Jewish and who is not. What do you bet that's not going to happen in the USA and Europe when they pull off their world revolution by some incident like 9/11 and trick everybody? The special status of Jewish nationality has been a way to undermine the citizenship rights of non-Jews in Israel, especially the fifth of the population who are Arab. Some 30 laws in Israel specifically privileged Jews, including the areas of immigration rights, nationalization, access to land, and employment. So the Jews are favored in Israel. Most people probably would agree to that. While a Gentile may be a citizen of Israel, he cannot claim his nationality as Israel. So if some non-Jew had been living there in his family generations for 3,000 years, they can't claim to be a citizen of Israel. I mean, they can claim to be a citizen, but they can't claim to be nationality as Israel. Simon Argonaut, the president of the Supreme Court of Israel, stated in a court ruling over the issue of Israeli nationality for Gentiles, there is no Israeli nation separate from the Jewish people. There is no Israeli nation separate from the Jewish people. The Jewish people is composed not only of those residing in Israel, but also of diaspora, where Jews are dispersed all over the world, like Alan Greenspan in charge of the Federal Reserve in the United States, or Sharonoff in charge of Homeland Security in the United States. All the Jews in the United States, by the fact that they are Jews, are national citizens of Israel, with all the benefits it entails. And even the court systems in the United States, you can bet they're biased towards non-Jews and give favored results to Jews in criminal cases, court cases, lawsuits. From what we have been reading and what we have seen, that without a doubt is going on. Very unfair. Israel cannot recognize an Israeli nationality because the theory behind the state of Israel is that it is the state of a Jewish nation which belongs to Jews of all over the world. So a Jew in New York or a Jew in London would belong to the Jewish accepted in Israel. Jews are granted special legal privileges over longtime Arab citizens of Israel once the Jew sets foot in Israel, simply because they are Jews. I wonder if people think this stuff is fair. How will they rationalize this? They want to deny Jesus. They want to deny God. They want to deny anything that's good. Aleister Crowley, do as thou wilt. As a friend of mine screamed at me on the phone one day and said, I'm sick and tired of your talking about God or stuff. There is no God. You can do whatever you want. There's no such thing as sin. Anything goes. So here we go. The ingrained official institutional racism by the Jewish state of Israel. So by the mere fact of their laws, they're a racist state. The principle of Israel as a Jewish state was supremely important to Israeli politicians from the inception of the state and was inculcated into the Jewish population by all conceivable ways. Now, what is it being Jewish? Is it a religion or is it a race? Like American Indians, Mongols, white people are a race of white people. Race of Africans, black people. But so I don't think the Jews can classify themselves by DNA as any standard race of people. Okay. Is it a religion? And they say they're not a religion because a lot of them are atheists. And a lot of them convert to Christianity and maybe other religions. So it's not a religion and it's not a race. Then what is it? And the Talmud Jews are hell-bent to stop any Christians from converting a Jewish person to Christianity. And as we read in the Henry Ford's book, that one person said Christianity is the opposite of our religion. So I think they are a religion. The ones that are in charge of the Zionists, the Kabbalah, witchcraft, Rosicrucian, higher level Freemasons who wrote all the Freemason books and convinced all the Gentiles to join those Freemasonic lodges and swear on oath of a Bible with a dagger pressed against their chest that they'll have their throat cut if they divulge the secrets and they promise to obey the master of the lodge. Master of the lodge. And the Freemason buildings are called temples. Jewish churches are called temples. And King Solomon's temple. So we can see they got a temple to something, which is a church thing, a religious thing. So it just seems to boil down to that if their religion is the opposite of Christianity, and Jesus Christ says the opposite of Christianity is Satan, then we can assume what we're dealing with are demonic, satanic beings who worship demonic and satanic gods. Moloch, Ra, Isis, Horus, Lucifer, Satan, many names, Baal. Pagan religion means many gods. And the first commandment says, thou shalt have no gods before me. All right. So when in the early 1980s, the tiny minority of Israel, Jews, emerged with which opposed this concept. A constitutional law, that is, a law overriding provisions of other laws, which cannot be revoked except by a special procedure, was passed in 1985 by an enormous majority of the Kisnet. By this law, no party whose program openly opposes the principle of a Jewish state, that would be, I guess, a satanic state, demonic state, or proposes to change it by democratic means, if all the people want to vote to change it from this Jewish state. So then none of these politicians will be allowed to participate in the elections of the Kisnet. So they passed a law that you can't be against their law. And that law is, it's a Jewish state. And what is Jewism? It's not a race of beings. They got brown Jewish people, white Jewish people, black Jewish people, Oriental Jewish people, Indian from India, Hindu Jewish people, Chinese Jewish people. Some people in Peru converted to Judaism, and they were allowed to move to Israel. That means that no politician who seeks to hold office as a representative of the Israeli Knesset is allowed to run for office if he opposes the concept of Israel being a Jewish state. So they passed a law that you can't change it. Once a person is officially recognized as Jewish, he is given special status and rights superior to any other Gentile citizen of Israel. Professor Schenck explains, and I expect that it'll be that way in the world. Just like we read in Professor Higger's book, The Jewish Utopia, in the previous video of mine. And all those other books I've been going over. Henry Ford, Texas Mars, Henry McCall, and the others. Once a person is officially recognized as Jewish, he is given special status and rights superior to any other Gentile citizen of Israel. Professor Schenck explains. Let me begin with the official Israeli definition of the term Jewish, illustrating the crucial difference between Israel as a Jewish state and the majority of other states. By this official definition, Israel belongs to persons who are defined by the Israeli authorities as Jewish, irrespective of where they live, and to them alone. So Jews all over the world own or part of the country of Israel. On the other hand, Israel doesn't officially belong to its non-Jewish citizens. So people who have lived there for thousands of years, it does not officially belong to them, whose status is considered even officially as inferior. This means in practice that if members of a Peruvian tribe are converted to Judaism and thus regarded as Jewish, they are entitled at once to become Israeli citizens and to benefit from the approximately 70% of the West Bank and the other 92% of the area of Israel proper. And we know they have plans on having a much larger nation from the river near Baghdad to the Nile. So thousands of times bigger country is what they envision. And if they're causing all the problems they're causing now, being dispersed throughout the world and having a little dot on the map, can you imagine what it is when they have a country the size of the USA? Bring about their New World Order and enslave everybody, Gentiles, non-Jews being inferior, and even the court systems and everybody else will treat we Gentiles inferior, if not horribly bad, while the Jews will be treated as our superiors and masters. Anyways, in the case involving Peruvian converts to Judaism, actually occurred a few years ago. The newly created Jews were settled in the West Bank near Nablus on land from which non-Jews are officially excluded. All Israeli governments are taking enormous political risk, including the risk of war, so that such settlements, composed exclusively of persons who are defined as Jewish and not Israeli, as most of the media meticulously claims, would be subject to only Jewish authority. And again, it still makes me wonder about Donald Trump's son marrying a Jewish woman and converting to Judaism, and his daughter marrying a wealthy Jewish man and converting to Judaism. Oh my, something more going on here that we don't know. All our politicians are coming from one Freemasonic lodge or fraternity or another, or you wouldn't be in political office Democratic congressman or senator or president. So everybody is being run by these fraternal, secret mystery schools of Babylon, witchcraft. And much of the world is unaware. Discrimination by a private party is one thing. Discrimination by the government is quite another. So it will be law of the land in the USA eventually, I believe, that to openly be a Christian and try to practice teaching Christianity or not agree with the perverted sexual revolution propaganda that's being forced on the people, you'll be called a hater. It might even be a crime. You either embrace Satanism or you're a criminal. Take the mark of the beast or you're a criminal. Give up your guns or you're a criminal. And Gentiles will probably not be allowed to own any land because they will point and they will say, look at all the problems we had when you were free. But see, they caused all the problems. The government, however, can enforce discrimination across its territory. They're doing that here in the United States. Agenda 21 and this fake global warming and sustainability, polluting the rivers, waterways, fracking, just the insane craziness going on. George Washington famously said, government is not reason, it is not eloquent, it is force. Like fire, it is a dangerous servant and a fearful master. The government of Israel is using its force to discriminate in favor of Jews across its territory and the world. I'm adding that. That necessarily means that Israel discriminates against Gentiles, people like me, that they call Gentile. I don't think I'm cattle. We should pray for these evil Jewish people, as Jesus said to do. If we hate them, we just join them. We need to pray for them and ask God to fix them. And the discrimination is enforced by the government. The Israeli government denies rights to reside, to open a business, and often to work to anyone who is not Jewish in Israel. And we know when they give people the mark of the beast, so it's said. If you don't have the mark of the beast, you won't be able to buy or spend or work or rent an apartment or do anything. Use money. That's why they want to make it a cashless society. This is not hyperbole. Professor Shank explains the Israeli government enforced discrimination against Gentiles. But there is another urgent necessity for an official definition of who is and who is not Jewish. The state of Israel officially discriminates in favor of Jews and against non-Jews in many domains of life, of which I regard 3 as being most important: residency rights, the right to work, and the right of equality before the law. Discrimination in residency is based on the fact that about 92% of Israel's land is the property of the state and is administered by the Israel Land Authority, according to regulations issued by the Jewish National Fund, an affiliate of the World Zionist Organization. So now we can see why they made all those loans to people to buy homes in the early 2000s. And then the whole bubble popped and everybody lost their homes and everybody's becoming renters. Because all they had to do, because they controlled the Federal Reserve, is make the economy good, and then they could throw the switch and make the economy bad. They want to make sure that we, American citizens, non-Jews, don't own anything. Is that okay? I don't think so. In its regulations, the JNF, the Jewish National Fund, denies the right to reside, to open a business, and often to work to anyone who is not Jewish, only because he is not Jewish. At the same time, Jews are not prohibited from taking residence or opening businesses anywhere in Israel. if applied in another state against the Jews, such discriminating practice would be instantly and justifiably be labeled as anti-Semitism, and would no doubt spark massive public protests. So if we treated the Jews here in the United States like they would treat non-Jews in Israel, there would be massive public protests. When applied by Israel as part of its Jewish ideology, they are usually studiously ignored and excused when rarely mentioned. So when people point it out, everybody just ignores it. They control the media, the TV, and the laws and the courts. So any non-Jew pointing this out would just be ignored. Anybody too loud or making any kind of dent in the exposure, as we have seen, would probably be incarcerated, medicated, called insane, mentally ill, and likely killed. History has shown us that over and over. Gentiles in Israel do not have equality before the law. And a Gentile is anyone who is not a Jew. And the Jew is not a race or a religion, but if it is a religion, it's got to be Satanism. As the Jew said in Henry Ford's book, we are the opposite of Christianity, is completely incompatible with our religion. He said religion and Christianity is incompatible and opposite. And Jesus said the opposite of his religion and his God was Satan and his God, or his religion, demonic beings. Who wants to really understand this? We all wish the whole problem would go away and the world would live in peace. But apparently these people don't intend to allow that to happen. So we have to look into it, become educated, believe in God, talk to God, trust God, have faith in God. If you want to be saved and protected from all of this monstrous behavior, as Jesus said, whoever believes in me shall be saved, it might behoove people to look into that. I believe it. I believe I'm saved. And I grew up many years not taking religious activities so seriously. I grew up Catholic. I believed in God, unquestionably. But did I really try to be a religious person? I was out sailing and boating and drinking beer and watching football and having a good life. Leave me alone type of attitude. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, these people were destroying my country, like they did all over Europe. Pierre Manot was one of the instigators who helped create the European Union in secret. You can look that up, European Union, on Wikipedia. Pierre Manot. You put his name in a 666 calculator, it's 666. Google CEO, Eric Schmidt, 666. Kissinger, 666. Computer, 666. Go look up 666 calculators online, numerology, and see some of the words. Monsanto is 666. There's something more diabolical going on. Because the injustice of the discrimination against Gentiles is embarrassing to Israel, they have found a way to conceal the discrimination in official documents. One way the discrimination is concealed is that the official government documents that bestow benefits on Jews do not identify the beneficiaries as Jews. Instead, the Israeli laws use the phrase, anyone who can immigrate in accordance with the law of return, to refer to Jews. The Israeli laws use the phrase, anyone who is not entitled to immigrate in accordance with the law of return, emphasis added, to refer to Gentiles. Professor Shank explains, other Israeli laws substitute the more obtuse expressions, anyone who can immigrate in accordance with the law of the return, and anyone who is not entitled to immigrate in accordance with the law of the return. Depending on the law in question, benefits are then granted to the first category, and systematically denied to the second. Wow. They know how to use their words and laws. The Israeli laws have their objective to increase the population of Jews and decrease the population of Gentiles in Israel. There is a basic concept in government that whatever the government subsidizes will increase. Obviously, that's true. Just like the USA government subsidizing poor people with socialism, welfare checks and money and perpetual college tuition and everything else, then the group of society of poor people, depending on the state, increases. Which means the government can shut off the faucet of that money and benefits anytime they want, and it's all controlled by the Zionist Jewish folks. They have control over the whole country. If everybody's dependent on this and has no savings or no means of productions and farmings and all that, they don't want us to be strong and free. Just a thought. We might want to pay attention. Professor Schenck explains how this principle is used to increase the population of Jews in Israel, and hence Jewish hegemony over the land, Jewish control over the land. Returns are eligible on their return to generous customs benefits. And I know for the last 60, 70 years, from my research, they have caused havoc everywhere, including Iraq, Argentina, the United States, created the anti-Semitism so that the Jewish people would leave and go home. The turmoil we have all experienced in countries all over the world where Jews were living, and the powerful people at the top of the pyramid of the Jewish world wanted them to return. A lot of them did not want to leave, so they made life difficult for everybody involved, blamed the Jewish people, created anti-Semitism, and so the Jews fled to Israel. It was all a plan. So they receive subsidy for their children's high school education, to receive either a grant or a loan to buy a business on easy terms for the purchase of an apartment, as well as other benefits. Citizens who cannot be so defined, in other words, the non-Jewish citizens of Israel, get none of these benefits. Try to compete with that. The obvious intention of such discriminatory measures is to decrease the number of non-Jewish citizens of Israel in order to make Israel a more Jewish state. So we can say in the United States, when they pull off this New World Order, it'll be the same. And Jewish people will get loans and buy up everything, cheap loans. And all us non-Jews will be renters. And if we don't do what they say in their slave jobs, you won't be able to pay your rent. You'll be homeless, and homelessness will be a crime. It's enough to stir up a little bit of concern. The Jewish institutional racism is part and parcel to the tradition of the Jews. Orthodox Jews are also religious chauvinists who do not tolerate any deviation from their oral traditions. The authority of the Jewish rabbis was absolute in ancient Israel. That's why they were so upset with Jesus becoming popular. Treat others as you want to be treated. People were so afraid of the Jews in Christ's time that they feared to be even caught speaking about Jesus. John 7-13. After the crucifixion of Jesus, Christians would meet in secret because the Jews were actively hunting them down. See John 20-19 and Acts 8-1-4 and 91-2. Orthodox Jews in Israel exercise the same iron rule today. If they take over the USA and Europe, yep, that's how it's going to be. When Jews are not subjected to discrimination by the majority Gentile government, when the Jews are not subjected to discrimination by the majority Gentile government, which we Gentile Christian governments don't discriminate against the Jews, the Jewish religious leadership loses much of its cohesive power over the other Jews. That is because a Jew who is excommunicated from the Jewish community can then find his own way as a free man in Gentile society. So they don't want that to happen. So if a Jewish person wants to just become an American, convert to Christianity, he's going to be ostracized, persecuted, and in Israel probably prosecuted. The shunned Jew can survive quite nicely outside the cloistered Jewish community. So Jews in our society, here in North Carolina in the mountains, get along with everybody quite nicely. And if they are in on the Zionist program, it's probably they're keeping that hush-hush. Like the Freemasonic lodges aren't allowed to tell about any of the secrets going on in the lodges. Hush-hush. That is why the Jewish hierarchy tries at every turn to increase anti-Semitism. Increased persecution and discrimination of Jews by Gentiles creates an environment where the Jews are caught between a rock and a hard place. So please, people, don't go out there and start hating people down the street because they're Jewish. We don't know if they're one way or the other, but likely if they're in the United States and they're living in your neighborhood, they're probably just like us Americans. But I do notice there's been a lot of new Jewish temples and schools and learning centers opening up across the United States. So I'm sure there's a lot of mind control programming going on there, trying to get the Jews roped in. Seeing what's looming in the future of this New World Order, a lot of these Jews have a decision to make. Whether they want to be on the winning side, the devil's side, of controlling the world, the masters, or the slave side, or the ones who get killed with the population reduction program, Agenda 21, and the propaganda about global warming and sustainability, and all that other craziness. The fear of the Gentiles encourages the Jews to submit to the authoritarian rule of the rabbis. So when they keep on making this information more public, probably more ignorant Gentile, white people, Christians, and black people, and everybody else will get angry at the Jews anywhere. And that'll exacerbate the problem. We need to have congressional hearings about these people, shut down their banks, and stop having them in control of our court systems and judges and lawyers and CEOs of corporations and everything else. Paragraph 2 of Protocol 9 of the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion states that anti-Semitism is necessary for the Zionists to keep Jews in line. Page 356. Their anti-Semitism is indispensable for us for the management of our lesser brethren. Jewish scholar Henry Mackay, I keep mentioning him, the guy who wrote the book Illuminati, the cult that hijacked the world, that would be these Zionist people. Henry Mackay, PhD, explains from childhood, Jews are taught that they are disliked for no rational reason, and Israel is insurance against another Holocaust. Well, I'm thinking there were a bunch of Zionist Jewish leaders on Hitler's staff, and I'm thinking the Jewish people and other people who were corralled into prison camps were all not Jews, and they were probably the good Jews who would not join the Zionism demonic team. Let the truth be told. Anti-Semitism has a manifold role in the Jewish scheme. And remember, Satanism, Luciferianism, the devil, their religion is deception, to lie. Everything should be backwards. They never can tell you the truth. One little simple thing I learned is, there's many examples of this. That spells devil. Spell it backwards. lived. Hold it up to a mirror. Spell it backwards. Devil, spelled backwards, is lived. There's something to this magical Kabbalah stuff. Numerology. I could give many examples of that. Kissinger being 666. Eric Schmidt, Google CEO, 666. Aleister Crowley changing his name to be spelled 666. People need to wake up. Alright, the Jewish hierarchy uses anti-Semitism to keep the Jews from assimilating into Gentile society. They want their Jews cloistered from Gentiles. They have historically used anti-Semitism as a means of herding Jews to Israel. The organization Jews Against Zionism explains how anti-Semitism is used by Zionists to further their ends. So there's an organization called Jews Against Zionism, and we've looked at pictures and I've shown you them. If you go look up Zionism and images on Yahoo or Google and find the image website, photo website, you will see many good Jews trying to expose everything I'm talking about, to how evil Zionism is, how evil the Illuminati are, high-level Freemasons, Rosicrucians, witchcraft, Kabbalah, Hollywood crowd, banksters, all our politicians who are bought and paid for. They wouldn't be in office if they weren't part of the team. They come from the Council of Foreign Relations, Heritage Foundation, Trilateral Commission, one Masonic lodge or another, George Bush, John Kerry, coming from the Skull and Bones. They're all parts of one fraternity of another, Malta Knights, the Knights of Malta, Knights of Columbus. It's endless. Thousands and thousands of these organizations recruit people into this demonic army for a new world order. Enslavement of humankind. And they hate Jesus and they hate Christianity. They killed Jesus and they want to kill Christians. That's what this information seems to be saying. And even in their own books, like the Jewish Utopia by Professor Higgins, that we went over. Theodor Herzl, 1860 to 1904. This stuff goes way back. Founder of modern Zionism, recognized that anti-Semitism would further his cause. And Theodor Herzl worked in one of Rothschild's printing businesses. It's all a conspiracy for world domination. And it's not a theory, it's a fact. The creation of a separate state for Jews to solve the Jewish question. In 1904, he said this. He maintained, so there was a Jewish question in 1904. Theodor Herzl, a Jew, said so. What was the question? Why were the Jews banned from Spain, France, England, Europe, Germany, dispersed from the land of Canaan, Palestine, to go all over the world? What had they done that was so horribly bad they weren't allowed to congregate together and live anywhere? One should ask that question. Of course, if they were Satanists into devilish activity, one could understand. So Theodor Herzl, the guy who wrote the book The State of Israel, founder of modern Zionism, said that to the Jewish question, he maintained, we must above all make it an international political issue. Herzl wrote that Zionism offered the world a welcome final solution to the Jewish question. It's not going to be so welcome. It's going to be enslavement and murder of the masses. In his diaries, page 19, Herzl stated, anti-Semites will become our surest friends, and anti-Semitic countries our allies. Maybe he didn't know what they really planned, what the Rothschilds really planned. Notice the language used by Herzl long before World War II and the rise of the Nazis. He described the final solution of the Jewish question. So World War II was not the problem, didn't begin the problem, it didn't end the problem. It was just a country that was used and abused. It was winning the war with England only because Germany was growing. It was a highly industrial country into iron and railroad tracks and industrial. And it was expanding. And the United Kingdom, get it? United Kingdom, the UK, was jealous, didn't want that, tried to stop it. It was losing the war with Germany, World War I, because Germany had invented submarines and had stopped all the ships from going to England and bringing food. Starvation was looming. And there, the high-level Zionist Jewish people, Rothschilds, etc., saw an opportunity. And they went to the UK and they said, hey, we'll get you money and promise you the United States that joins you in the war. And the United States at that time was pro-German. Remember, when we declared independence, we had declared independence from England, the king and the queen. So by the backdoor means, they put the king and queen back over us. They own our Federal Reserve. Our country has been hijacked by the king and the queen and their co-conspirators, these Zionist Jews for the New World Order. And who knows if they are some kind of evil DNA reptilian creatures David Icke talks about and other people. And what's it got to do with UFO and aliens and magic and remote viewings and CERN with Shiva out front? 666 is the logo. The Vatican's telescope in Arizona called Lucifer, and so much more we have talked about, and we will talk about more. We haven't got to the root of this, and if it is some kind of interdimensional spiritual entities that were cast from heaven, Satan and his army, it might explain a lot behind these people. The language and concept did not originate with the Germans. It originated with the Jewish Zionists. The final solution was not an extermination of the Jews, as is commonly believed. It was the persecution of the Jews in order to drive them out of Europe and into Israel. So there was a plan to get them to leave Germany, to get over to Israel, to form this new country. The Nazis were simply unwitting tools in the hands of the Zionist Jews in their Machiavellian plan to gain control over Palestine. How many Americans died? Germans died. People all over the world died in this war for this evil plan of Zionism. Bloody Zion. Get the name of the book? Herschel explained in his diary how anti-Semitism furthers Zionist goals. It is essential that the sufferings of Jews become worse. This will assert in realization of our plans. I have an excellent idea. I shall induce anti-Semites to liquidate Jewish wealth. The anti-Semites will assist us thereby in that they will strengthen the persecution and oppression of the Jews. The anti-Semites shall be our best friends. Hertz's Diary, Part 1, page 16. I think I'd like to have a copy of Hertz's Diary. So-called anti-Semitism is also a tool for the Jewish hierarchy to keep the common Jews in line. Do not fall for that trick. If the Gentile world persecutes Jews, then the Jews will feel that they must seek the protection of the Jewish hierarchy. And let's not forget, over there in Israel, they say they have 300 nukes. It's something called the Samson option. And if we try to stop them, they're going to push the button and nuke all the major cities and take the world down in flames with themselves. That's what we're dealing with. Some really psychopathic people. But then again, the people who are really behind the scenes will be in safe places. Maybe in those underground cities they've built all over the world. And then they'll have all these other people die so they can obtain their world dominion over the world. This gives the Jewish leaders power over the common Jews, because they cannot thrive outside the insular Jewish community. The common Jews must follow the evil dictates of the Jewish leaders who scheme against the Gentiles. Jesus holds the answer to the Jewish issue. As Christians, we are to love our enemies. We are to be innocent in our conduct, but we should recognize and reprove the evils of Judaism. Do not allow the sin of hatred to overcome you. Moving on. I'm going to wrap this up. I want to make it too long of a video. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, and against the rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness of high places. So with that in mind, let me just stop here and do another little sidebar. I like to make my videos a little fun too. But I am reminded that before the UFO alien issue ever came into being, people were talking about they could use that as a trick to fool mankind. And we know they had advanced technologies over there when Hitler was building those rockets and apparently flying saucers. And we know there have been ancient civilizations far advanced than we are now that probably still exist on planet Earth in the Himalayas or in other underground cities and remote locations. But as the world grows more high-tech, those remote locations become less susceptible to keeping everything secret. So I just thought I would grab a couple books from my UFO collection and some other subjects. But flying saucers on the attack. UFOs. I'm just wondering and thinking, you know, we know what they were trying to do back then with World War I and World War II. So this book here was published in 1954. Remember, we were supposed to go to the moon, per Kennedy said. He said that it said that in 63, I think. He was killed in 63. And so there were some interesting things going on in the background. Colossal death ray aeroform. That's what it says. Flying saucers on the attack. Colossal death ray. Look at the top of this. I remember what H.G. Wells said. He said, all we people were like animals and couldn't be trusted. So they were, what we can say is that nature has in it her power to create a more dreadful catastrophe than panoramic man can himself bring about on the earth, and that he might just as well live and behave decently while he can. Anywhere the missing planet was 3 times further from our central sun than is the orbit of Earth. A missing planet. Who can say or gainsay on our present extremely scanty knowledge whether the cosmos has a police disputed to watch what sort of insane experimentation is doing forward on the earth? In these days, the warring ideologies and struggle for global power. Did you hear all that in this book? You see my logic for saying something's a little suspicious about the UFO books and the whole subject. Flying saucers uncensored. I just took a little peek at it and thought I'd just talk about one little paragraph. And what year was this book published? So I don't think these are separate issues from this Zionism. Let's see, the Interplanetary, Flying Saucers Uncensored, published in 1955. The Earth's Gravest Hour. And we know there's a lot of fear-mongering going on in the world now. There are reasons for people naively supposing that the flying saucers phenomenon have ceased to exist. 1955. In 1953 to 1955, Great Britain's heir. Remember, the war ended in 45-46. In War Office, authorities imposed a rigid ban on the communication of such information, not only on officers in all ranks of air and army departments and branches, but even through civilian transport ministries and on personnel of civilian airports. Similar bans have been imposed in the United States. In 1954, President Eisenhower was publicly assured by his military and Air Force advisors that no non-terrestrial or cosmic aeroforms planes were traversing the skies of America. So they had these aircraft. They would let some people see them, deny that they had seen them. They were creating a conspiracy. So they were trying to mess with the people's brains, and they were trying to destroy Christianity. And this was after World War II. And in Project Paperclip, they were bringing on all these German scientists and German technologies, flying saucers and rockets, to the United States. And operating Project Montauk and Project MK Ultra and other mind control and time machine technologies. Philadelphia experiment and Project Montauk, they had electronics. And this is all Tesla technology. So I do believe there is an interdimensional world, a spiritual world. And I do know that we're all made up of electromagnetic particles, atoms and everything. And it appears from my investigation that portals in time and space are possible. And the Philadelphia experiment apparently disappeared when they surrounded it with microwave transmitters and turned them on, like that. The whole thing disappeared and reappeared 100 miles down the waterway, with some people half in and half out of the bulkhead. Steel wall. Their legs would be sticking on the inside corridor, and their chest and arms and face would be on the outside of the corridor. And the steel beam. So when everything dematerialized and reappeared, everything wasn't where it was supposed to be, and so a lot of humans got caught in the bulkhead. And apparently, one scientist in Nexus magazine, I've got to find it, was working with something called Jacob's Ladder. It's two little poles like this. And then they have that little electric beam going like that, up and down. That's called Jacob's Ladder. Well, anyways, one guy was working. He had manufactured a miniature Jacob's Ladder, and his pen fell out of his pocket. In between the Jacob's Ladder, that little electricity beam that kept going up and down, and it disappeared and reappeared 10 feet across the room. He said, what the heck? He had created some kind of electronic magnetic portal. So he went and got a penny or something and dropped it in there, and poof, it reappeared there. He built a bigger one and put a rabbit in there, and it appeared alive across the yard. So these electromagnetic portals seem possible. And remember, we got CERN going on with Shiva out front. And in the Bible, it says that the end times are going to open up the portals to hell and let these demonic beings loose. So yeah, it's interesting to open our minds. Extraterrestrials among us. I have been collecting UFO books for a long time. And we'll go over some of these in future videos. But one subject at a time. And right now we got to find out what's behind the New World Order and Zionism. And the other things. The Illuminati, the Freemasons, the demonic beings, Satanism, Church of Satan, Kabbalah, the banks and all the plans, Jade Hell and things they're doing. The Pope coming to America saying it's an emergency for global warming and sustainability. We have to put the clamp down on the USA people because no, it's not sustainable. What's not sustainable is what they're doing. If they stopped what they were doing, we'd all be living in harmony. But anyways, this book was published 1995. Extraterrestrials Among Us. And Aleister Crowley was communicating with Hiwazi, some kind of interdimensional master being, the evilest man alive, who was having sex with children and killing them. And apparently it's part of this evil reptilian religion. Even people in high places like the Queen are accused of being into this child abuse, drinking blood, killing children, eating children, sex with children. Can't make it up, go look it up. It's too bizarre because I've seen too much of it, and it's just too much to take in. So I highlighted just a little bit here in this book. Just a little sampling of things to think about. In 687 BC, so that's 2,700 years ago, 2,700 years ago, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, extraterrestrials among us. Listen up. 2,700 years ago, Jesus was born 2,000 years ago, so 700 years even beyond that. King of Assyria led his enormous army against the Hebrews and laid siege to Jerusalem. So the Assyrians laid siege to Jerusalem. A blast from heaven reduced the bodies of 185,000 Assyrian soldiers to ashes, but left their clothing intact. I guess this is something in the Bible or in historical documents. In modern times, targets for microwave radiation at an intensity which reduces flesh to ashes while leaving clothes intact appear to be selected at random. So now I'm thinking, wait a minute, HARP systems, microwave transmitters, they're building them all over the country. Alaska, south of Florida, Puerto Rico, Norway, a whole matrix of these things in big V's are these gigantic microwave transmitters. And I'm reading this, and I'm thinking, why are they building those HARP microwave transmitters? What happened 2,700 years ago? Advanced technologies at work again? Did somebody have that technology back then that they could microwave a whole army? Boiled the flesh but left the clothes intact? Frequently, but not always, the victims are elderly people. Apparently, there's been many cases where people have burst into flames. One woman who had committed suicide was struck after she was dead, her corpse half consumed by fire, although it was in a closed coffin at the time. Witchcraft in the sense of projection of an etheric body for destructive purposes may be a valid explanation for those cases in which UFO activity seems unlikely. Perhaps under certain circumstances, concentrated hatred or anger may manifest as extreme heat. So it just wonders, you know, how much power do our spiritual souls have? The starships of Ezekiel. I've got enough books to keep me reading till the rest of my life and never get there. Published in 1974. So you got this engineer, or NASA engineer, working on space rockets and stuff, and he reads about Von Daniken, the gold of the gods, those caves down there in Peru. And Van Daniken's description of Ezekiel, describing something that sounds like it was a rocket. And this guy planned on debunking Van Daniken, and found out that Von Daniken was right. And that the description in the Bible seems to be something that was the spaceships of Ezekiel shocked the scientific community and astonished the world at large. It contains evidence of a technology far ahead of ours in the 6th century before Christ. So a lot of people smarter than me are putting this together also, that there has been, there probably is, some advanced beings on planet Earth. And there is an interdimensional reality, a spiritual reality versus this material reality. And we might all want to keep that in mind. And there appears to be clear plans by evil people for world domination. And the God of the good people, Jesus and Holy Spirit, Holy Father, are trying to warn us that we can be protected. And this cosmic battle, it seems to be a battle of souls. Those who believe God wants to bring to heaven in his mansions, and the Luciferian Satanist people don't want you to believe and want you to be recruited for their underground, underworld domain of souls. I just grabbed a book out of my library, Many Mansions, the Edgar Cayce story. He was the one who did 17,000 readings. People came to him for ailments that the doctors couldn't cure. He would go in a trance and give them the solution. And then he started doing life readings about reincarnation in past lives. Again, we're talking about a spiritual world, if there's such a thing as karma and reincarnation. What's going on? I don't profess to know everything. But I know enough that I should pay attention to what's going on in the world about this New World Order. And taking away all of our citizens' property and rights and enslaving us for an elite few. And this has happened in the past. You know, there was Genghis Khan ravaging the world. There was the Roman Empire. Hitler tried it. Chinese dynasties. Khazarian Empire. There were many empires. People have been behind the scenes trying to control the world for a long time. And they go up and down, up and down. The people need to see it. I'm always reminded after the fact, people always say, if we knew now what we know now, we could have prevented it. But we do know now before it happens. We're talking about it now, those who will pay attention. So I just thought I would do one small paragraph here out of Edgar Cayce, the greatest psychic ever known, who did thousands of readings, and they have a Virginia Institute of Edgar Cayce where you can go there and see all his stuff, and many books are written. But approaching the companion subjects of reincarnation and karma, two of the oldest beliefs in history of man and more widely accepted than almost any religious concepts known to man, Dr. Karamina examines the data in terms of depth of psychology. Her analytical perception and her analysis of both of these concepts as possible explanations for well-known psychological problems move the whole subject from a consideration of religious belief to primitive and ignorant people to the respectability of serious study. So I'm just saying, there's all kinds of material out there to show that there's more to reality than what we know. So back to this book. Anti-Semitism, page 358, is not the answer to Jewish hatred of Gentiles and hatred of Christians and Gentiles. So anti-Semitism is not the answer to the Jewish hatred of us. The solution is not to strike back at the Jews. It is to love your enemy and believe in the spiritual God and Jesus, what he said, and share with him the gospel of Jesus Christ. But the Jews on Run the Show are not going to let you tell other Jews about Jesus. I know from my reading in Israel, if you're a Jewish person, you embrace Christianity and Jesus, you're likely to find a bomb in your mailbox. Matthew 5-44, if you suffer persecution as a Christian at the hands of the Jews and their fellow travelers, rejoice and be glad that you are worthy to suffer for Christ's sake. For Christ's sake. Blessed are ye when men shall hate you, and when they shall separate you from their company, and shall reproach you, and cast out your name as evil for the Son of Man's sake. Rejoice ye in that day, and leap for joy, for behold, your reward is great in heaven. So as spiritual beings, if you stick with Jesus and God, and not join the satanic team of Zionism and Illuminati and high-level Freemasons and assassin Jesuits and banksters and all this other evil they're trying to convince you that is good and cool, like gay marriage and all that, bisexuality, transgenderism, and all those other craziness things, pansexual, adultery, Ashley Madison, guaranteeing to keep it confidential. If you want to find somebody to cheat on your spouse with, which is the 7th commandment, do not commit adultery. But their religion is the opposite of the 10 commandments. Remember that. There's something bigger afoot here. And I'm no saint. But you don't have to be a saint. None of us are saints. We're all sinners. But we can mentally make a decision not to join the evil team. And to be aware of what they're doing and share it. Behold, I send forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. So with good people and Christians and other people who don't embrace this evil world are sheep in the midst of wolves. But ye therefore be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Matthew 10:16. Jesus explained that those who hate him also hate God and the Father. These Zionism Jewish peoples do hate Jesus, so they hate God the Father. And Jews hate Jesus, and therefore they hate the Father. That leaves only Satan as their God. It says here on page 359, Edward Hendrie, Bloody Zion. Jesus clearly warned us that Christians would be hated by the Jews. We've read the books I've been going over. The Jewish Utopia by Mr. Higgins. They certainly hate us and want to see us dead. In the Talmud, their Bible book, I guess, the evil one, the best of the Gentiles shall be killed. And the best one of the person who came and tried to reteach the world, their own Messiah that was prophesied, Jesus came. They prayed for a Messiah. But he told them what they didn't want to hear, so they crucified him. If the world hate you, ye know that it hated me before it hated you. So Jesus is saying they hated him before they hated us. Jesus was not saying that you should not defend yourself from physical attack by Jews or anyone else. I'm reading highlighted portions here. And I don't profess to know anything. I'm just making the conversation and commentary so people can ponder and do their own research and come up with their own solutions and understanding. Jesus does not mean in Luke 6-27-29 that you should allow someone to physically harm you. In fact, Jesus advised his disciples to be armed so that they could defend themselves against those who would seek to physically harm them. Jesus said unto them, he that hath a purse, if you have some money, let him take it, and likewise his scrip, money. And he that hath no sword, let him sell his garment and buy a sword. So Jesus' suggestion to get you to get a sword to defend yourself. So I suppose in 2015 he might say, don't give up your guns. Don't be hating anybody. Don't go out there trying to kill anybody. But you are permitted to defend yourself and your nation. Why do the Jews hate Christians so much? Is it because the children of the flesh will always hate the children of the Spirit? Many books out there that bring together a lot of questions on things, as we have seen. Stuff in the Bible that describes these different advanced technologies and beings. There's nothing new about the human race. Look at these beings on this book. Just like the one Aleister Crowley said he was communicating with when he meditated and talked to masters, higher dimensional beings. The evilest man alive. I got many of these books. Is it all propaganda? Was it meant to divert everybody away from God and Jesus and the real, true reality that we are spiritual beings, and trying to convince us that there's some kind of far-fetched planet out there, like on Star Trek, and eventually come with some gigantic hoax that some aliens are going to come save us? And it'll actually be these Zionist people in charge, and banksters and all their high technologies and holograph equipment. Moving on here, Orthodox Jews are made by their religious leaders to hate Christ and Christians. Page 361. Jews are powerful and ruthless, but they lack wisdom. That is their weakness. They have convinced the world through their control of the media that they are exceedingly intelligent. Nothing could be further from the truth. God tells us that. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the holy is understanding. Proverbs 9-10. The Jews reject the Lord and have fear of him. They are in darkest ignorance. The Jewish leadership does not want the common Jew to see the light. That is why they prohibit Jews from reading the New Testament. The gospel of Jesus Christ is the only effectual weapon to the Jewish issue. Well, yeah, fighting the devil and these evil spiritual beings, the tool would be God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit, of course. And it's not some Romulans or Palladians or something like that that we should believe in. We should believe in ourselves and our spiritual being and the decency, not this obvious, perverted propaganda they're trying to push on us. Grown people watching some of these cartoon shows, just a little bit crazy. How much are people's minds being warped? For the word of God is quick and powerful, and sharper than any tongued sword, two-edged sword, piercing even to the dividing asunder of soul and spirit, and the joints and marrow. It is a discerner of thoughts and intents of the heart. Hebrews 4-12. So I want to finish this up here. False claims of anti-Semitism are used as a shield to protect the Jewish hierarchy when evidence of their claims are uncovered. So they would just call somebody like me an anti-Semite. When I am happy that Jews would change from this demonic religion of the Talmud and Zionism and all that, and abusing everybody and being arrogant, and become a Christian and another decent person, and we all live in peace and harmony. So how does that make me an anti-Semite? I want everybody to live in peace and harmony on the planet, Jews included. God said here to love your enemy. Pray for them. Former Israeli government official Shamlat Aloni succinctly described the epithet anti-Semite as a trick we Jews always use. So this former Israeli government official says anti-Semite, the epithet, is a trick we always use. She explained that Jews hide behind it like a smokescreen, which is used to conceal evidence of Jewish malefaction. By the trick of labeling a person as an anti-Semite, the accused person's credibility is undermined, and the focus shifts from the evidence against wrongdoing by Israel or the Jews to the motives of the accused anti-Semiter. I'm worried about this New World Order and the destruction of the United States, and it does concern me to watch and observe the Arabs fleeing all those Middle East countries to European countries, and those who have not already fled being murdered or carpet bombed or phosphorus bombs, even like molten lava poured on children and women. Give it up, folks. There's just evil going on over there. And you don't have to be an anti-Semite to see that. You don't need to be Sherlock Holmes to understand it. Anti-Semitism is a versatile tool that is fashioned in the Machiavellian family of Judaism. A close examination of neo-Nazi hate groups reveals that there are Jews throughout their leadership. Let's think about this for a minute. KKK, Ku Klux Klan. Did you know if you go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, it's the 11th letter in the alphabet. Numerology says 11 times 6 is 66. So KKK is 666666. If that's not the mark of the beast, I don't know what is. Is that a coincidence that K is 66 and KKK is 666666? Just saying. And by the way, 3 6s is 18, and 8 and 1 equals 9, and 9 is the number of the devil. 8 is the number of Jesus, and 8 also is the symbol for infinity. And 10 is the number for God, and 10 breaks down to one God. Interesting. So the neo-Nazis act as agent provocateurs in the hands of the controlling Jews in order to fan the flames of anti-Semitism. Remember those KKK folks wore those hoods, burned a cross. Look at their symbolism on the internet, KKK and images. And then go look up Freemasons and go look up Illuminati, go look up witchcraft, Jesuits and all this, and you're going to see a lot of similarity. We've gone over them in previous videos, and we'll look at pictures again. There has been a resurgence of the power of the Jewish hierarchy in Israel because of the hostile Arab nations that surround Israel. You think? That hostility is secretly encouraged by the Israeli government. You think? For example, the Israeli government secretly funded and encouraged the growth and activities of the rapidly anti-Jewish terrorist organization Hamas. I've said this all along. Hamas, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, ISIL, they're all creations of the world money powers paying mercenaries to pretend to be these Arabs and attack Israel so that they can go and destroy all of the Arabs. And they have a plan. If you go look up Zionism in images, you'll see the larger country they propose to create. From the river near Baghdad in Iraq all the way down to the Egyptian pyramids of the Nile River. It's a pretty large area. Egypt to Syria. All the way down into Saudi Arabia. Look it up. Hamas fulfills a twofold goal, undermining the influence of the secular Palestinian Liberation Organization, Fatah movement, and the National Liberation of Palestine, and creating hostile Islamic religious opposition to the Jewish state that was afflicted with the surrounding hostile Islamic countries. Hussein Zerouski explains, the Islamic associations as well as the university have been supported and encouraged by the Israeli military authority in charge of the civilian administration of the West Bank and Gaza. They, the Islamic Association and the university, were authorized to receive money payments from abroad. All right, I'll try to do one last paragraph here. I'm wearing myself out. So this guy's in Israel. The first cab driver I rode with in Israel pointedly called the Philistines animals in the course of polite conversation. That's Zionist. He was cautioning me to keep away from the Palestinians while in Israel. So you're in a taxi cab in Israel. They will kill you in there, he told me, when he learned I was going into Gaza, more Zionists. All right, moving on, some stuff I highlighted. Common Zionist statements are, our warfare is self-defense. They hit us first, usually with rockets. They are animals. and Israelis are Holocaust survivors. Zionist points all Arabs as inferior. It is a language of racial superiority, and it is no stretch to call it verbal brutality. Now remember, here in the United States, in the news, they want to make these Arabs out to be demonic beings, slaughtering children and enslaving their women. And here in America, they want to make Christians as haters who don't embrace the perverted new sexual revolution. If you call it that, pedophilia, bisexuality, transgenderism, pansexuality, probably bestiality coming, gay marriage, man marrying another man. It's just a little bit hard to fathom how one man could marry another man. I mean, logic would dictate it is a man and a woman and get married and raise a child and a family as normal. In biblical history, it wasn't Adam and Steve, it was Adam and Eve. And when God created the earth and put Sataniel, called Satan, in the Garden of Eden, according to the Rosicrucians story on this stuff, he created a female from earth, Eve, for the divine being, Sataniel, called Satan. And they had a son named Cain. So for Sataniel, Satan, in the Rosicrucian book, Mystery School of Babylon, making a mate for Sataniel, God didn't make Steve, he made Eve, a woman. And by the process of sex, obviously, Sataniel was a male. And if you go look this up in Rosicrucian, he was a kind of a reptilian-looking creature. And he had an earth woman, and they had a son, Cain. And Sataniel, i.e. Satan, abandoned Eve on this earth that God had made, according to the Rosicrucian stuff I studied. I've shown you the book in previous videos. So God felt feelings, empathy for Eve. So he made another creation out of earth, man, Adam. And Adam and Eve had a second child called Abel. And then the first son, whose father had abandoned him, Cain, slew Abel. Everybody knows that story. Cain slew Abel. And then Adam and Eve had a second child named Seth. So the lineage of humanity comes from the lineage of Cain, the first murderer, and the lineage of Seth, the second child of Adam and Eve, because Cain had slewed Abel. This is in the Rosicrucian material. I didn't make this up. So on the planet, you got these beings that might be of this divine DNA, part reptilian, snake. And then the ones that are made up from earth DNA, Adam and Eve, that are not cold-blooded humans, but people with feelings and love, the rest of us. So we got the evil entities trying to kill us good entities out of jealousy. Why Cain slew Abel. All right, one more paragraph here. And it turns out that an old friend, Caesar Harno, unraveled this puzzle 8 years before. Operation Cast Lead, when he told me about the use of molten lead as a prescribed method of killing Gentiles before to as burning. Let's see what this says. In the Talmud, it describes in detail the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin. Remember we talked about the Talmud? And we're going to talk about the Talmud some more. 4 ways to kill a mortal enemy, each gruesome. Burning, it says, consists of tying the victim in a pit full of human excrement, human waste, urine and manure, pulling open his jaws with forceps, and pouring molten lava down his throat to his bowels. Is this not what Israel did to the people of Gaza at Christmas 2008? When Israel's military actions ended on January 18th, some 14,000 Palestinians had been killed. Among the dead were hundreds of unarmed citizens, including 300 children. Burning was the most common cause of death. I've seen pictures of those phosphorus bombs they had dropped on the people in Palestine. Can you imagine just dropping a gigantic vat of molten lava right over the city and the people and the children? I think we've all got to wake up and see what we're up against. As I say always, don't believe everything I say here and read here. You have a notebook and take some notes and go look up stuff, get the book, get some of the other books. If what we're reading is real, we got serious problems. Thank you for watching my video, Rick Miracle Reporting.